UFP, the United Federation of Podcasts.
Infinite diversity.
Long and prosper, and welcome to Infinite Diversity, a Star Trek Universe podcast here on the United Federation of Podcast Network. I'm your host for today, Justin, and joining me is my co-host, Chrissie. Unfortunately, Brandon's out this week looking for some black boxes. Hopefully that search is going well, and maybe we'll hear more about that in a little bit. We also have no news on this episode, but we do have a very special guest that we're going to get right to. That is Star Trek author Una McCormack. So Una, welcome to Infinite Diversity.
Thank you very much for having me. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, it's so wonderful to have you here. So listeners, as you might know, there's a new Discovery book that came out, Wonderlands, basically about the lost year of Michael Burnham between episodes 1 and 2 of Discovery Season 3. And we're going to talk about that in some detail with Una. But first, I think, Chrissie, you had some questions for Una about some of her academic work, right?
Yeah. I do, because our listeners may not be aware that you hold a PhD in sociology, if your Wikipedia article is correct.
Yeah, it's absolutely right. Sociology of all things. Yeah.
No, I love it. So, Dr. McCormack,
Indeed.
How has your academic background influenced your work in fiction writing?
I was a very bad academic. I've sort of had several versions of a career of being an academic. I'm not an academic at the moment. So I quit my job a couple of years ago. The anniversary is coming up. My friend Jim Swallow, when he quit his day job, he calls it Jim Dependence Day. So I call mine Unification Day. So that's coming up. So, but how does the work influence it? I think basically what sociology is about trying to understand the connections between individual experience and one's sense of agency or ability to affect the world around you. And those structural or social factors that can influence or constrain or nudge your behavior. So I'm really interested in that relationship between the individual and the society that has nurtured or given birth to them or, educated, socialized them, and their ability to alter it. And what we as individuals can do to affect change. So that mediation between the individual and the social structure is what I'm interested in. And it turned out that I was much better at doing this through the medium of mass market space opera than I was through academic papers. So
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. But I don't want people to dismiss or ignore the amount of work that it takes to get that PhD after your name. And, so I wanted to make sure, as a fellow woman in academia, even though I'm not a PhD, I'm a starving adjunct. So,
yes, I've been there as well. Yeah, when I business school and my last PhD student passed her Viva on Thursday, which is listeners might not know is the kind of big exam that you get. It's quite a grueling interview. It was a sort of 2 hours. She had she absolutely aced it. She was phenomenal. And her PhD is I think the first of its kind. She was a creative writing PhD, and she wrote a fan fiction novel set in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which centered Australian Aboriginal indigeneity. She created a Aboriginal superheroine. And then there was sort of a long essay exegesis on that. So I think it might be the first PhD of its kind, a creative writing fan fiction one. Anyway, she aced it, so I'm over this, out of this world, over cloud nine.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Also, that's telling me that I should maybe go for a different PhD program than history, because writing fiction as a dissertation.
Well, the nice thing about writing fiction is that you don't have to research the details, you just make them up.
Mm-hmm. That's really useful when you're doing the comps. All right, well, I think I know the answer to this, but I just have to ask. Which was easier, your dissertation or writing novels?
Writing novels.
Yeah, that's what I thought. After what you said, I figured that's.
No,
but I had to ask.
I was increasingly dreadful at it, and we got this PhD. I think they just eventually gave it to me to get me to go away. They knew I wasn't leaving without it. So, just
That's all right.
But partly it was difficult because I was. I think there's a classic mistake that people make on their PhD, which is that they don't actually write the PhD. And what I was doing instead was writing Deep Space Nine fan fiction. So which is how I got my lucky break. So I can't complain.
Yeah. Oh, I know that feeling.
Yeah. No, it's great to know all that, and of course that did lead you into writing Star Trek novels. You've written a number of them, and of course this latest one is Discovery, based on something kind of in the middle between episodes 1 and 2. So I think as we were watching the season, it felt like, okay, there's definitely a place here for a novel, and I think Brandon was speculating like that's got to be the next novel. It's a natural place. So I'm just kind of curious. When you knew you would be writing this novel, like what was your approach to thinking about it? Because I think you could just use some things on screen, but there's a lot to fill in and kind of make up. And how did you kind of approach that task?
Well, I think so one of the things that happens is when you're kind of brought into the loop, so you sign all these non-disclosure agreements that will hand over your child if you break any secrets, kind of thing. And once I got that signed, that meant I had access to the scripts as they were being sort of produced and rewritten. This is fairly standard when you're writing for a show in production. But really, there was not much. There were a few throwaway lines about adventures that Book and Burnham had together, and I mean a throwaway line. They have a kind of bantering exchange where they go, "Do you remember this time? I remember this time. Shall we do it this time, or we can do it that time?" And really, I think I managed to get whole chapters out of those.
And it felt that way at the time, like, oh, they're just putting some stuff in here to give some background, but we've got to hear about that.
Yeah. So, and then the other thing I'd add, apart from that, is that I really wanted to explore the character of Sahil in much more depth. And so that was just such a glorious, centered performance, just hinting at this great world and live life behind him. So I really wanted to sort of build that up and find out more about that man, and like I was saying before, the world that would have created him, what that personal history and social history would have been. So he was someone I really wanted to get into, and then I think the central triad of the book are those three: Sahil, Burnham, Book, and building the novel up from that. So a handful of throwaway lines, and knowing that this character had to be explored.
Yeah, and maybe going off of that, I mean, I think Sahil, just from, there's this short scene at the very beginning of the first episode where he's waking up every day and goes to this desk and just waits there, and then at the end of the episode you see him more, because that book is like, hey, maybe I should take you to this person who can maybe help you out with your thing. And then you see him a little bit at the very end of the season when he's become lieutenant, he's at Federation headquarters. So like little bits, but I think he's become a real favorite character just from that performance. It's such an authentic, beautiful performance. And so I was also very delighted to see that there was a lot more Sahil in there and getting more of his thoughts and how he goes about things. So I'm just kind of curious about that. I mean, I'm sure we'll go into details and spoilers a little later, but maybe without spoiling things, a little bit about how you approached writing out Sahil, who just had, a few minutes here and there in the season.
Yeah, well, like I said, like you said, that performance just feels so rich. Actors seem to be able to do this thing where they just somehow are able to create this sense of a lived life. I'd reading about actors, very interesting kind of creative process, and reading about the kind of craft that's involved. I think that it's partly, tapping onto their own experiences or what they've performed in the past. But I just we don't know what it's like to be a member of a fallen civilization and waiting for a starship to turn up that will never turn up. But you can tap into emotions of longing and regret and nostalgia to put that on screen, and it's so brilliantly done. And I just thought that there must be this guy can't be getting up every morning, brushing his teeth, sitting at a desk for 9 hours and nothing's happening. There must be this station he lives on, something else must be going on. So I imagine this kind of sleepy backwater with bits of the station aren't functioning, but some people would pass through. There'd be news. I think he has he can sort of see ships in flights, and maybe they're responding to him. So it's the last kind of you sort of imagine a rundown way station or something, or that last Roman fort that's been overrun a couple of times by the visiting Vandals, but there's still a bit of a garrison there, or at least one centurion. It's not quite packed up and gone home. So it was that kind of feeling. There's little bits of structure around him, and trying to imagine what that station would be like, and that. And the minute you start to imagine other people there, then the world quickly starts to fill itself.
This is going to sound absolutely ridiculous, and I'm curious, listeners, if anybody else thought this. I was glad to see Sahil had people around him, because for some reason I thought he was completely and utterly alone.
Yeah.
And it, so it's like, oh, there's people around.
Yeah.
He's not. And I don't know why I thought that, but
it does. I mean, it shows him that, and I know it's representing a psychological state really more than anything else. And if you want to read it that he's completely alone, then he's sort of been a hermit. Then that's there on screen, but it didn't seem plausible to me. It seemed to me that there would be more, not much. I mean, it's not busy, but more, and that this would give me a chance to sort of show you. We all know what a busy and bustling space station would look like. Well, what would one look like that's partially broken down and mostly abandoned, and just a few levels of it are still functioning as they used to? So yeah, he couldn't be there on his Todd, could he?
It's funny because we had a chance to interview the actor who plays Sahil Adil Hussain, and we kind of asked him about that, and he's like, you know what? He's a practitioner of Indian meditation. He meditates all day.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, maybe. But yeah. But I just think it's delightful that we got so much of Sahil in this. And I think Adil Hussain said that he was going to read the book, which is really cool.
Yeah,
I saw that on Twitter.
Really nice on Twitter. So I'm absolutely, I was thrilled about that. He's clearly lovely.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's talk a little bit in general terms about kind of the other parts of the triangle, which is Book and Burnham. Of course, Burnham is a character that, we've seen a lot of. I think Burnham is the only character that is in every single episode of Discovery, not even Saru's in every episode. Right. So like she's there, she's the focus. So there's a lot that we know about her and her journey. And then, she gets dropped into the 32nd century and she meets this person, Book. And there's like all this stuff, that they go through over the course of the first episode, from fighting to maybe getting along to being betrayed. There's, all of these things that are happening. And then you see them in episode 2, and it seems like they've been through a lot, and certain things are settled. So I was just curious, but for those two, for Book and Burnham, like what your approach was to kind of fitting them into this intermediate area between the episodes.
Well, they're screwball comedy, aren't they? They're sort of they're frenemies. They're enemies to friends to enemies. There's another triad there, of course, which is the cat is in the middle of all this.
Oh, that's true.
So
yes.
I think of them as like Nick and Nora from The Thin Man. But behind that, and I've said this on other podcasts, but the kind of couple behind this is Beatrice and Benedict in Much Ado About Nothing. So that's the kind of sparring ship. And once these two got on the page, I mean, the dialogue just kind of bum. This novel's writing itself. This is fantastic. It was great. Deadline's quite tight. So there's spar, and it runs onto the page, and that again is down to that great performance that those two actors, that great dynamic and the chemistry that they have, of this sparring going on, but almost in a way, each one is daring the other to become closer, to reveal. Daring the other to intimacy. I sort of think they could keep this sparring on forever on a top level, but actually what they're doing is they're going, dare you go a little deeper, dare you get a little closer, dare you a little closer, and again I think they do get closer and closer and closer. But yeah, Screwball was where I started, and Beatrice and Benedict was really what I had in mind.
I think it's great because there is a lot of funny banter and things that go on in the midst of like all this action and things that they're going through, and I really like that. And actually, one thing I made a note of is when they're surprised at something, like, "What now?" And I don't know why I laughed every time you put that in there, but it was just became this thing that was just really funny. And Burnham says it and Book says it over and over again. So anyway, I think that was delightful.
Quips. I don't like writing action very much, so if you've got a couple of people bantering, then it gets the action written really quick as well. It's sort of, because you get it through the flippancy and the whoa, that gets the action down on the page in a really good, entertaining way.
I mean, it really, when you get that banter, and there have been a lot of places in Star Trek where you've seen that when action's going on, it makes it fun. It lightens it. It's like, okay, this isn't like the thing that's going to depress me all day. It's like, it's kind of fun to watch, even though there's some danger. So
and it makes action meaningful. Otherwise, it's just, you may as well be playing a beat 'em up game or something. It's got to be the people in the moment. I loved it. I had loads of fun with them. As I say, absolutely flowed onto the page, which is always good.
That's wonderful. That's so wonderful. So I think since we've talked about some general things, should we give a spoiler warning, Chrissy, and really get into it?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Spoiler warning.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So if you haven't read the novel, you really should. Wonderlands is a great novel. But even if you haven't and you want to keep listening, that was your warning. We may spoil some things for you. So I think, in this novel, I think there are some kind of really interesting things that are going on. I think there is kind of Burnham trying to adjust to this thing, right? It's like, okay, I've been dropped into this future, and of course we see her in the first episode, but then after that it's like, okay, found Sahil, there's hope, but then after a while it's like, okay, what else is there, and how can I find people, and maybe I should adjust to this and become a courier and all of that. And I really liked, Burnham's kind of reflections on everything she's been through, because this is a character that's been through an incredible amount of stuff in her life, and she's having to kind of really deal with that. But one of the things that I think is really interesting in season 3, but also in this book, is that it's not like nobody remembers the Federation and it's completely gone everywhere. There are like these little pockets of things that you can see and people who believe in it. And one of the things I wanted to call out that I enjoyed so much is when Burnham has become a courier, she's at one of these exchanges and she sees these people. It looks like they're in kind of Starfleet uniforms. So it's like there's a Star Trek convention almost like going on, and they're just so interested in all these artifacts that she has, these plaques and things like that, these reenactors. I thought that was so wonderful, because you see this group of people that as Star Trek fans we can relate to, like we're really into that idea, and so are they too, but for them it's also something in the past, so there was kind of a poignancy to that. But so I just wanted to talk a little bit about that, like what was kind of driving the decision to basically put kind of cosplayers and convention goers in the novel. I thought it was a really fun thing.
Well, yeah. I was sure that I got this from everybody's asked me about it, because they've really glommed onto it, for obvious reasons. I was sure there was a line in a script, that a throwaway line about there being reenactors.
I don't think it made it.
It mustn't have made it, which is great, because it makes me look brilliant. Because everyone, God, what a brilliant! Oh yeah, it's totally my idea. But I'm sure it must have been a script. Anyway, I can see why it's one of those lines that does get cut because you're running 2 minutes over or whatever. But absolute gold for someone like me, which is, it's exactly, you take a word like that and you go, oh, Carol, who would these people be, and what would they do, and would the costumes be right? Because they've never actually met a Starfleet officer, so they'd be like the collar be a centimeter too wide, or not quite.
You know what I thought? I thought of the Voyager episode "Live Fast and Prosper," where these people, like the uniforms are off, the comm badges are too big because they don't really know what it looks like.
Exactly,
so it made me think of that.
So they're doing their best, but also I think so that's a bit of fun. And then the idea of it sort of being a conventional, these kinds of things, and everybody going, oh, it's the Starfleet guys. They're a bit odd. We all know, we've all experienced, haven't we? But at the same time, it's almost like the lantern bearers. There's some of the people who are still remembering trying to remember what this was like, what this great civilization might have been. And while we sitting here sort of look forward to this shiny future, I think they're looking back and at a world that was lost, and that had a lot of poignancy for me, I think. So they're fun, but they're also a vessel for maybe our nostalgia. And although our nostalgia is kind of future focused, there's this sort of retro focused, I think. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The bit about the uniforms being not quite right is dead on for reenactors. My husband used to do World War II reenacting.
Yeah.
And invariably, and you know, the vets would come in and they would treat them like royalty. And rightly so at this point. Okay. But there'd always be like, oh no, you need to do this to fix, you need to do this to fix, you need to do this fix. Because invariably it's only been 70 years.
Yeah.
You know?
And just think of the actual processes of manufacturing the material, or the fine, how fine the needle can stitch, or something like that. The sort of precision of it would all be different. So this would all just be slightly. So Burnham's kind of looking at it, going, "Oh well, if I kind of hold up a refracting mirror, maybe it's close my eyes a bit, it looks okay." But the desire for it to be right or to approximate is the sort of the poignancy of it. Yeah.
On a funnier note, were you inclined to make any, or tempted to make any snide comments about the uniforms? One-piece pajamas with no pockets, heavy maroon, jackets with 5 layers underneath that nobody could breathe, or something like that.
Stay away from that. I don't.
Okay.
So if I'd had any sense, I'd have spoken to some friends and got some gags in.
Yeah. So I think one of the things, I'm just kind of going through some of the things that were striking within this, because so Burnham, has these I like that for a while she kind of has tea with Sahil every day, and it just becomes a ritual. Yeah. And then it's like, you know what, I need to go off and do my own thing. And she kind of goes off and does that. But I think before she does that, Sahil gives her, I think it's something where a device where she could do her own logs, but it also includes some of Sahil's great-grandmother's logs. And I think I have the name. It was Priya Tagore, if I got that right. But yeah, I thought that was really fascinating, because that's somebody who was there, before the burn, kind of during and after, and just seeing kind of these log entries for this person who was on the Federation Council. They, were kind of visiting their homeworld on vacation. All of a sudden the burn happens and they're stuck. It's like, okay, maybe it's like a temporary problem, but they're realizing over time, this is a real serious problem and we have to adjust to it. And she's talking about doing that, and eventually becomes, I think, the president of the planet, right, as they kind of move along and do their own thing. And I think it was interesting as well in that she's already talking about the damage the temporal wars did and how they had maybe weakened things or made it so they focus more on the more powerful members. I thought that was a really interesting kind of way of putting it, such that if there is some big event like the burn, there was already some weakness there to fracture it. So I just wanted you to talk a little bit about the logs, because I thought that was a really great, interesting addition to kind of go back and talk about what that transition was, because clearly we're well after that in the kind of the present of the story. And kind of what your approach was on that, or how that came up.
Well, things like logs are a great cheat for a novelist, because you get into first person, and the words start to flood on the page. So you think, great, that's about 3,000, 4,000 words I've got in the bag. So I knew that, but also because you have to move out of narrative and you move into a kind of first person direct report, it makes it tremendously immediate. So I was always going to put Michael's log in, because that was going to give us direct access to her thoughts and her emotional experience. And that was the core of the book, the changes in Michael. And then I thought, well, this is how I'm going to access the other central mystery of the book, which is the experience of the burn, because everyone's living in the aftermath, and they're living well in the aftermath. Nobody she meets has direct experience. Nobody knows how it happened, which of course is the mystery of the season. Nobody has lived through that experience. So what I need is a first-hand account, and that became, I think, isn't it, Sahil's grandmother, I think.
His great grandmother,
Great grandmother.
Yeah,
that would be it, because
yeah.
it would be if it was his grandmother, he would have sort of interviewed her directly or spoken to her directly. It's just shifted out of living memory. But that account would give us that first-hand access and would see the sort of shock. We would feel, hopefully, and see the shock. And I was writing this book sort of it must have been maybe we'd gone into lockdown in Britain in mid sort of second half of March. So I was writing in June. And so I was tapping directly into those feelings that were sort of going, well, end of February, I was in Los Angeles. Now I've not been further than, 20 feet from my front door.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, it's
the world going to be the same when it's over, and how long is this going to take? And we were assuming, 18 months to 2 years, which is, looking about right. And so thinking of that on that kind of sudden, impactful collapse on a galactic scale, a planetary, interplanetary wide scale, there would be people going, well, whatever it was, somebody back on Earth will put the plug in and it will all turn back on again and it will be fine. And of course, this doesn't happen. And I think she's very canny in realizing this. And it's actually one of my favorite bits of the book, because I really care about this kind of thing. Well, what's her legitimacy? And she kind of, reconstitutes the planet and this and that. These things matter to me, so I put them in. And that's how she sort of, she moves them away from being a member of the Federation, a kind of independent state. And they've done pretty well. I think they've got a couple of starships and this space station. So, they're able to kind of function on a small scale. But that's what those logs were for, to give us that direct access. And first person is always the way to do that. And Star Trek has that built into its DNA. It has the captain's log, the star log. So you make good use of that as much as you can.
Yeah. I'm a bit of a political junkie, so I was really appreciative of all the little bits and pieces in there. And the thing about the conspiracy theories, that she's like, oh, there's people who are saying that I invented this, and I just all I could think of, and I was like, she did write this during quarantine, at least this part of it.
5G.
Yeah. And magnets. I don't know if you heard about that. The woman in Ohio.
All that. Yeah. Magnetic. Yeah.
So, that to me would be a plus. I wouldn't lose my keys anymore, but whatever. Right. So the other thing it made me think of, and this is relatively current to U.S. politics. So the listeners who pay attention to U.S. politics will know what I'm talking about. The rest of you should be paying attention to U.S. politics, particularly if you're in the Americas. Really the whole world has to look at us and go, what? No, after the last few years. But the guy who is trying to change or trying to prevent change, the one man, just reminded me of Joe Manchin, the senator from West Virginia.
West Virginia,
who has been just standing there going, no, I'm not going to vote for it. I'm not going to vote for it. And I realize you may not be paying attention to American politics and that this was recent, so this is not your inspiration for it. But that made me wonder if you had any particular politicians in mind anywhere in the world when you were writing that about one man preventing the good from happening.
Yeah, well, I keep a close eye on it. At least you've voted your guy out.
Thank the gods.
Yes.
Still a bit hairy over here for a while yet.
You'll get there.
Well, I hope so. It's what gets through it worries me, but what will be left on the other side. But yeah, I think there are many, many examples of. He's a bit of a. This guy, I don't. Do you know what I actually had in mind? I think the thing that people might remember is, of course, I'm in Britain, and we've just had a massive. We're still living through the fallout of the Brexit vote.
Yeah,
and this is a Brexit book to some extent. It's a book about a large supranational organization not moving nimbly enough to deal with change, and that I think is so. Maybe at the back of my mind, I had some of those comfortable bureaucrats who didn't see that this was going. I mean, none of us saw it coming, to be honest. So
Yeah.
But people who are going, well, why do we want anything to change? It's working all perfectly well. Well, it turned out in Britain that lots of people did want it to change. They might not have been quite sure what change they wanted,
Yeah.
or even quite like the change that they've ended up with. But there's, definitely they've been persuaded that something could be done. And for a long time in Britain, you could see people were really in denial. They couldn't accept that this had happened. And I'm guilty of this. And they couldn't accept that this was going to go through, and it has, and it's happened, and we're living with the consequences. And so maybe I had a sort of version of that, a bureaucracy that is caught on the hop, and that certainly perhaps could extend to the Democratic Party, which perhaps has been unable to move in response to this threat that is manifestly, American democracy is manifestly, and not many people have been able to move quickly in response to it, because we don't really believe it's going to happen, do you? We beat fascism. Nobody's going to try that one again, are they? Oh lordy, they are. So
Yep.
Yeah, and I think that catches people on the hop, because ultimately you don't expect people to be bad faith actors. So I think possibly that politician wasn't such, he's not one of the bad guys, but his complacency is contributing to a problem, and those fractures are what leave the Federation in a bad way. That's what makes it fall apart so quickly. It's not so much the burn as the cracks that were there, that the burn breaks open wider, I think.
That poetic. While we're on this, the discussion in the journal about how the Federation had expanded so much before the Temporal Wars. The only thing, the thing that kept going through my mind with that was the Roman Empire, right before Diocletian comes in and says, okay, we're going to split it up like this because we can't deal with it. So I didn't really have a question there, except that's what it brought to mind.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And that whole situation was completely in my mind when I'm writing the book. If you're writing a book about Fall of Empire, well, you can kind of. I mean, we're looking at the decline of the American Empire right now. I've been a historian. I'm Irish, but live in Britain. I got a history degree, so you live through the decline of the British Empire, and then where do you look to see, almost like the case of a imperial collapse? You look to the fall of. And that's all there in the book. It's intentionally there. I think she quotes Burnham quotes an Anglo-Saxon poem at one point, which is a poem of the Saxons kind of standing in the ruins of these great artifacts, going, flipping heck, I don't know how they built these things, but they were impressive, aren't they? Oh well, come on, Edgar, pull another stone off, and we'll take it and shore up the cattle barn. Yeah. So
yeah.
And that's what they're doing with these planets. They're literally, the what I envisaged was that manufacturing would collapse, come to a standstill. You're basically in a subsistence mode. You're pulling stuff from around you just to shore up what's there. So you're not building, you're shoring up. So the Roman stuff is absolutely there. And then, whichever declining states you want to look at, whether it's the American Empire or the European Union, all of these things are there.
Yeah, and then you add to that they're going from a post-scarcity society to going back to I imagine it started as barter at first, but then a money economy. It's just, there's so many layers to that.
Yeah. So. And we see a bit of barter and a little bit of sort of money. I mean, they've clearly got tokens of exchange. So they've learned that again pretty quick. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about something that was an interesting thread throughout the book, because there is kind of this vacuum with the Federation collapsing and, different kind of powers and couriers and things like that. And one of the things that that we see is there's this Federation starbase. Starts out as Starbase 906, and it gets taken over. I think we see at the beginning of the book, and we're not sure when at that point. And then we kind of come to it later, and it seems like it's been spruced up. It looks great. Maybe it could even be like a Federation station. I think at some point Michael goes there and she's like, yeah, this really, is this the Federation? And I thought that was really interesting. Of course, in the book, we find out it's actually kind of backed by these ruthless raiders. So it's not really what it seems. But I thought that was interesting. They were kind of trying to appeal to, okay, we'll bring order. It'll kind of look like the Federation, but behind it, what they really want to do is just kind of push through forcefully and raid and control people and all that. So I just wanted to see if you could talk about that a little bit and kind of the role that it has in this novel.
Yeah, I guess I sort of I wanted her tempted by this, and I also try and make the villains. At the end of the day, you're writing a kind of thriller, an adventure book, and you sort of need an antagonist. But I don't like my antagonists to be big bads. Yeah, I like them to sort of have a reason for what they're doing. And I think Remington thinks that the worlds that she's brought order to, and I think she explicitly says this in some places. These places were falling apart. They were just about at subsistence level, and we've brought stability, and at some places we've got manufacturing up and running again. People are healthier, but it's coupled with this. That's the justification of any kind of warlord, isn't it? And again, I'm in that sort of post-Roman settlement where I'm imagining a kind of spacefaring version of various warlords, kind of. I'm thinking particularly in the kind of the context of post-Roman Britain, because it gets all collapsed over here. I think certainly don't have as many written records. And you've just got, warlords galloping through, and but if you back the right guy, it probably is a little bit more comfortable than every week there's a new bandit. Yep. So that's their justification, and to some extent you can kind of understand that. I think she might look at Michael and go, well, it's all very well for you. You've had a century and a half of peace to enjoy, but that's not the situation that I'm in. And in order to make a kind of peace, I'm having to fight some wars. So that's her justification. I kind of leave that open to the reader to judge whether they sympathise. Obviously, Michael has to be victorious because it's a Star Trek book, and she's the lead of it. But other people might look at Remington and go, well, maybe she's got a point there. Possibly she's a little bit greedy. She enjoys bringing that war a little bit more than she might do. But that was the idea behind it. This sort of idea of warlords trying to bring a sort of order to a collapsed situation.
Yeah, and it is really interesting.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
no,
Charlotte.
It's a good analogy.
It's the Frankish becoming the Holy Roman Empire, where the Federation is the original Roman Empire.
Exactly.
And we're going to put all of the heirs on, and
and the iconography of it, and simultaneously sort of say, well, we're not that, but we are in the tradition of, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If you like that over there, you'll like this now.
Exactly.
Yes.
You enjoy the Roman Empire, you will enjoy it.
Yeah. Like we see from your purchase history, you've bought the Roman Empire before. Maybe you like the Holy Roman Empire too.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, but it is really interesting because you mentioned Remington, who's kind of this commander of this starbase, and then you find out at a certain point that these White Palm Raiders, I guess they have these ships with these kind of white streaks across them. The guy who runs it, I think it's Levitt, is kind of behind that, and they're talking to Michael, and I think they're genuinely surprised. They're like, "What do you mean? It's going to be made better? Just have Sahil, give up, and we'll take over there, and everything will be great." I think they genuinely thought like, we're going to make things better like you wanted. Isn't this the right way? Because I think their thought is like, who cares about the method? The end result is things are brighter, fresher, cleaner, more stuff and all that. But for Michael, I think in the best... Yeah. But in the best tradition of Star Trek, Michael is like, the method does matter, right? It does matter how you do that and how you accomplish it. And I thought that was really good.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah. So we've actually only talked about Book and Burnham a little bit kind of on the sides, but maybe we can focus on it more because I think there are some kind of interesting things that they get into on some different planets. And I'm trying to remember because I think there are some different places we visit. I think one of them is Atlas 4, which is the planet that is, I think they're just having a lot of trouble and they having a problem with their water reclamation plant or something like that. And Michael kind of gets involved in it and kind of doesn't realize what's going on. And I think she has kind of these different experiences. She goes to Ikasu where things seem like there's a distress signal. She's like, I gotta help. And she goes over there to kind of see what's happening. It seems like it's a great society, except it's a crime to look up into the heavens and wonder what's out there. So I thought that was interesting seeing kind of these different worlds. Some of them aren't doing well, some of them are doing well, but they have all of these restrictions, which is maybe reminiscent of what we see in the third season with Earth, where it's like things still seem shining and gleaming, but we're just going to keep everyone else out. So I thought it was interesting kind of seeing those different pockets and what was going on. And sorry, I'll just mention a couple others that we could talk about it. But the generation ship they encounter, I think it's the Muldoon, where there are these people, younger people who are kind of have some knowledge of the Federation and they're, wanting to venerate Michael. But it's like the other people, they're like, what are you talking about? We're doing fine. We don't need any of that outside influence. So I just wanted to see, like, how did you kind of go about these kind of different places that she visits? There are kind of these different ways of doing things. Some of them doing well, some of them not doing well. Some of them are interested in the influence, some of them aren't, or there's kind of this tension. I thought it was interesting to bring kind of those different kind of pieces to it.
Yeah, it seemed to me that she would be, that she's, throughout the book, she's hunting for... She's trying to find that pocket where the Federation still exists. And every time she goes somewhere, she finds a sort of, it's like the kaleidoscope twists and she gets a new reconfiguration. And all of these places have now been disconnected from that central idea. They've started to spin off in their own directions. So she can never quite find it. Of course, the message of the book is that because she carries it with her, sort of thing. That's the kind of I know Discovery plunges in at the end, which I assume is not a spoiler. People it is now. If you watch season 3, there you go. But the idea was that she could never find the Federation because it had gone. But she could see all these sort of fragments, and even if she visited all of these places, these fragments would not reassemble into what the Federation was because it was gone. And she had to kind of come to terms with that to be able to live truly in this world and start to have a hope start to move forward on that journey of, well, how do we reassemble it? What's the process of building it again, rather than living in a state of denial? So that was the idea. And of course it gives variety to the book and lets us see what the post-burn situation will be like and what factors would have made those worlds collapse or hold together, whether they became isolationist or they were short of resources. I think the guys on the Daedalus, they've done a deal with the White Palm, haven't they? So they've cut a deal with the devil. My own favorite one, I love the generation ships. I'm really into generation ships. I love the Courier planet because I love the idea of these kind of rough, hard living guys. You go home and it was like a little Cotswolds village and Mum was there making cheese. I really love the idea because they'd all have to have a home, wouldn't they? People don't spring from nowhere. So I love the idea of the people. It's quite little country cottages. They went back to them.
I love that too. That was on Donatu 7, right? Because of course, I think what we see in Discovery season 3, there's these couriers and they're off doing their own thing. But like in a way, it's almost like the equivalent of, they're truck drivers that go out on the road for a couple of weeks and they come back to home to see, the spouse and kids and friends and all that. And then they go out again. So it totally makes sense.
Noisy and dangerous out there. Home would be, it'd be a bit of fishing and the crossword.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my, conceit about that. But at the same time, they're probably, their elderly parents are probably couriers. So, they might be a bit old to go out there. And another theme of the book, I think, is and maybe it's just that I'm getting older, is I think everyone is thinking about, they're not as young as they used to be, and what happens when they can't be swashbuckling adventurers anymore. And Michael has to think about the fact that her life expectancy has been reduced. That 130 years, people aren't living anymore. So everyone's sort of while they're thinking about the mortality of the Federation, the loss of that, the death of it, they're thinking in many ways of their own mortality as well. So that's behind the book.
There's that's very visible in the character of Ileana Padan. She's the courier, right? Yeah. Right. And
the Cardassian I would have expected from you. Thank you.
Yes, of course.
Cardassian, hasn't there?
Yes, there does.
Why not?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Right. Oh, that very much made me think of, this is a commentary on what happens when there's no social safety net.
Yeah.
For people who can't work anymore. Yeah. Exactly. For whatever reason. And it's just, yeah.
And I hadn't seen Nomadland actually, but when I was writing this book, but I think it's tapping into similar themes. At some point, we all live in mortal bodies, and we age and we decline, and to think about the kind of society we live in that accepts this, and helps everyone be able to live the whole of life. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I love the Padan character, because I've seen other people have different reactions, but for me, at first I was like, all right, yes, a great Cardassian, and she's interacting with Michael, and seems to have like a good sense of humor and way of thinking about things, but it's like, I'm getting older and all that. And then she goes to this Vanguard starbase. I like that it's called Vanguard. I'm assuming that's just a tribute to the Vanguard novels, but so she goes to this starbase, and it's like, and she finds out it's kind of not as it seems. But I almost felt like as it was going along, and you were seeing what happened, and Michael thinks she betrayed her, that I was like, well, maybe it was tempting enough. But I was delighted that in the end it was like, oh no, I was just trying to arrange for things, and she becomes like the commander of this base. I thought that was sort of that was
against her will, but I think she's, at the end of the day, it is a very comfortable chair, and she's ready to do some sitting down. So so good. I'm glad she was a fun character, and of course there has to be a Cardassian. It's as simple as that. Yeah,
there has to be. I mean, and I love that too, because in season 3 of Discovery, it's like, oh yeah, there's a Cardassian captain that doesn't get any lines, and there's a Cardassian here, but you haven't gotten like to find out where they're at or have anyone talk or anything.
Did they ever join the Federation? This kind of thing going.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a lot to explore there. So yeah, that was pretty delightful, just seeing that character and what she was doing. So I think I've kind of covered a lot of things I want to. I had the canon connections area, Chrissy, but are there other things you had?
Didn't you say something on Twitter about you're rewatching Enterprise? And then you're talking about the Temporal War in this?
Yeah.
Would you like to give us an exclusive announcement? On your next book or something?
No, I just noticed. No, there's nothing that I sometimes watch TV for pleasure, not just research. No, I realised that there was a whole load of new Star Trek about to arrive, and that I had some pretty significant gaps in stuff I hadn't because I hadn't seen it. I actually hadn't.
Happens.
It's just the way things were transmitted in Britain, and it wasn't so easy to get to see stuff. So I hadn't seen a lot of Enterprise, certainly not since it was on. I hadn't seen the animated series, which I've polished off now.
All right,
excellent.
I've got 2 episodes of that left, and then the second season of Short Treks. We've never really got in the UK, so that's it. I've got 2 animated episodes.
Can't you get the second season of the short treks on? Isn't it on some Blu-ray collection?
It is on a Blu-ray, but we've kind of gone disc-free in this house. We're also
Aha. Yes.
So I could probably borrow them off a mate or something. So I will get around to seeing them.
Okay.
But I thought I better scamper through Enterprise. I think I got through it in about 4 weeks.
You did it pretty quickly.
Quick.
Yeah, I kind of I was writing, so that meant I was kind of doing really intense mornings, and then I'd kind of slump for a couple of hours, and be angry. Enterprise.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I know.
Really
I know that there were
yeah
issues with certain things, but I'm just curious. Is there like a favorite episode
Oh,
that you
Carbon
had?
Creek, absolutely. I think Carbon Creek
Creek.
Oh, yes.
is in my top 5 of Star Treks. I think it's exceptionally good. Of all Star Trek, I'd put Carbon Creek there. And you see in that episode exactly how good Enterprise could have been. So starting with that trio again at the start of Archer, Trip, and T'Pol, who are kind of the central, though Phlox obviously is completely brilliant. You think this is how it should have been. Yeah. And this massive Shaggy Dog story kind of nods to Twilight Zone, beautifully played by all the Vulcan characters. Absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. And always with with Star Trek, you're often kind of coming to terms with what you want the show to be and what the show actually is. But it's particularly marked in Enterprise, and the actors are so good, and several of them are failed so badly. But I'm still, giving it everything. There's so much there. It could have been such a great show, and you do feel that there. But they never got it on screen, except briefly in Carbon Creek. I feel. But it was a fascinating. I really, really enjoyed it. Thought season 3 was pretty dull. That was a bit of a grind. Season 4, obviously, they were starting to find their feet, but they never get there. And it's really, really sexist. It's more sexist than original Trek, which is remarkable.
Yeah, it definitely has a lot of problems in that way.
Yeah.
But there are episodes. I mean, in addition to Carbon Creek, I really like the Vulcan arc in season 4.
Oh
That's really interesting going into that.
That's all really strong. Whenever they're doing anything like that, and with obviously with Shran as well, very poignant moment where you have the members from the 4 species sort of there on screen. Although it's 3 male characters are sort of centered.
Yes.
Visually, they can't let it go. But you wonder what the next season would have been like and whether they'd have run with that. But somebody tweeted me. It was a really nice tweet. They said Enterprise walked so Discovery could run. I think that's a really nice way of putting it, isn't it? Yeah. It was really good.
I like that.
Yeah,
that's really interesting. So I wanted to mention a couple of things in the novel that I made a note of for little connections and interesting bits. I really like that you had in the novel, let's see, there was Commander Marshak of Starbase 906, Captain Culbreath of the Gavnor, and Science Officer Laura, which is, I assume, references to those 3 Star Trek authors. So I think that was a nice little thing that you put in there.
McIntyre there as well. So there's Vonda McIntyre. So
Oh, that's right. Oh, I don't know why I didn't make a note of that, but I thought that was.
I know. I felt a bit bad. I kind of. Well, this is a big spoiler if you haven't read that. I immediately bumped them all off. A backhanded tribute, but I thought it would be fun to put those names there.
Yeah,
I think one of the hardest things when you're writing a book is to come up with names. So what I always do is I kind of come up with a theme, and once I'd hit on kind of women Star Trek novelists, then I kind of went, whoops. They're all getting finished off, but it's the easiest.
That's just a novel.
Yeah, it's a novel.
They understand.
Not just a novel, but I mean, you're not really killing them. The other thing that I made a note of, and I'm not sure if it was a reference to this. So on that planet, Atalis 4, there's Freya City, and it made me think of the character from Voyager's Heroes and Demons that the Doctor meets in the holodeck. Maybe it's not a reference to that, but I thought it was.
Probably not. No, I was probably
Okay.
I probably had some Norse god thing going on in the background, but
and they just put that into that episode. Okay.
yeah. I'm not. You kind of at the back of your mind, you sort of have a sort of, where am I deriving the names from for this? And I thought, well, we get a lot of Saint this and Saint that. Let's go for some Norse gods this time. So I think that was probably
no. Okay, that's great. So I guess I just wanted to say at this point, as we maybe wrap up a little bit, anything else you wanted to kind of add about the novel, or something you've been wanting to say about it that you haven't said on another podcast?
No, I'm really pleased people are enjoying it, because obviously it was written in lockdown, and I barely have any memory of writing it, to be honest. And then when it was published, I sort of opened it up. I was thinking, oh God, it's going to be terrible. And I opened it up and I went, actually, this isn't a bad book. I'm just really pleased that it's come out, and people have been really nice about it. I think maybe some of that sense of loss and loneliness of lockdown, maybe I think people have really responded to in Michael's situation. So it's good to know that people have liked it, I think.
Yeah, I love the novel. I thought, definitely wanted a novel in this period between that first and second episode, and I love how it just filled all of these things in. And what I felt that it did, it was not only like, oh, there were some throwaway references and we're going to do this and that, but for me, it made the world feel kind of a lot more lived in and complicated. And I mean, even though like in season 3 itself, you're going to all these different planets and places, and in the novel, by necessity, it's just kind of this kind of local area. I felt like there was just a lot that was added to that to make you feel like you had an idea of what was going on, just even at that level, kind of around Sahil spaceport. So thank you for that.
Pleasure. Well, you've got the space in a novel. You know what you have to do in 30 seconds on screen. I can do. I've got 3 pages. So but it's it feels fleshed out and lived in. That's exactly what I wanted.
Excellent. Yeah, so Una, thank you so much for joining us for the discussion about your novel today.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. I love talking about myself. So,
so where can listeners find you if they wanted to connect online?
Definitely come to Twitter, where I'm usually burbling on. I've finished with Enterprise now, so I've just started watching The Expanse. So maybe I'll start ranting about that quite soon. So at Una McCormack on Twitter. Okay.
And is there any current or upcoming work that you can talk about?
Definitely, yeah. I've got coming later in the year, I've got 2 books coming out. I've got a Firefly novel called Carnival. It's coming at the end of the year. It's really exciting. I've always wanted to do a Firefly book, so that's there. But for sort of people interested in Trek, I have the autobiography of Mr. Spock coming out later in the year.
Yes.
I did a Janeway autobiography, and we've got Spock biography coming now.
I love the Janeway autobiography, and I'm looking forward to the Spock one, especially because I pre-ordered it 3 years ago, but I know they had to keep pushing it and pushing it.
But it's, I think it's been back in time to save some whales or something.
Yeah.
I think I just assumed that originally they were going to have it out in 2018, and then they're like, oh, he appears in Discovery season 2, so we need to think about that, and that's what I assume happened.
Yeah. I think I don't really know the history of it, to be honest. I just sort of got
right, because it was David Goodman originally, right?
It was, yeah. But now it's me. But that's done, and hopefully we'll be, heading your way quite soon.
Yeah, I think I saw September 7th is what it looks like.
Yeah. So where are we? June, was it? Yeah, wow, okay. It's sometimes the turnaround's so quick. So you think, whoa, another book. But that's
yeah.
So I think we've got Spock first, and then Firefly.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, definitely looking forward to checking that out, and maybe we'll have you on to talk about Spock and his autobiography.
Definitely. That'd be great.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, thanks again. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so Chrissie, where can people find you when you're not dreaming about being a reenactor in the 32nd century?
That would be interesting.
I don't know. Would you want to be in the 32nd century? It seems pretty dicey.
It depends on where you are, I guess.
I guess so, yeah. It's pretty nice on Earth.
Yeah. Maybe jump to the 33rd after the next Federation has come together.
Yeah, that's true. No, I was going to say jump ahead a couple of years when Discovery and Burnham and everyone helps to put the pieces back together.
There you go. There you go.
So anyway, where can people find you?
Of course. Right. So in addition to here on Infinite Diversity, you can find me on History with the Szilagys, which is a new twice-weekly podcast here on the UFP network that I do with my partner, Jason. And I'm happy to chat about all of our shows in the Federation Council Chambers on Facebook. I'm also on Twitter at The Goddess Livia. That's TheGoddessLivia, where I tweet about Star Trek history and leftist politics. And Justin, where can people find you when you're not looking to set up shop on a nice, quiet planet so that you can go be a courier?
Yeah, I don't know about the courier life, though.
Yeah, I don't think you would be a courier.
I think we've talked about this before, that if I was, I don't know, let's say in the 23rd or 24th century, as far as Star Trek, maybe I'd have a podcast or something. I don't know, what would a 32nd century podcast be like? Would it be like talking about the multimedia adventures of hero couriers? Maybe they have shows like that. Yeah. Anyway, when I'm not
reviewing
thinking about
Captain Proton holo novels, of course.
Ooh, that would be cool. Okay, well, when I'm not doing that, you can find me on Twitter. I'm at TrekFan4747, where I tweet about nothing but Star Trek. And you can also find me in the Federation Council Chambers on Facebook. Hope you'll join us there. All right, so listeners, Brandon usually does this. I'll try to do it justice, but we do have a lot of other shows on the network throughout the week. Brandon knows all the days, so I'm not going to know all the days. But anyway, Brandon and Zach do Franchise Fatigue, which is all about movies, remakes, and sequels. Tony Robinson does Trek Pod, where he interviews people involved in Star Trek. We have Ken Tripp, Abby Ambrose, and Travis Kreisman doing General Quarters, which is a military podcast. There's also All Good Things for basically all of the old quote-unquote Star Trek, other than the new stuff that we're doing here, which Amy Nelson and Patrick Devlin do. There's Galaxy Class, which is all about TNG, with Rhea, Kevin, Amy, and Joe. There's Mickey's Marvels for everything Disney with Chris Tribuzio, Patrick Devlin, Casey Pettitt. There's always Hold On to Arrow for everything Arrow with Lance Laster and Kavanti Chillis. As Chrissy mentioned, there's History with the Szilagys twice a week. That's Tuesday and Thursday. I at least know that one.
That is, yes.
Right? For your caffeinated history. And then we have a new one, which is Sasquatch, which is a Bigfoot multimedia podcast. That one's a lot of fun to dive into with Ken Tripp and Zach Moore.
Mm-hmm. And we'd like to take this opportunity to thank our current patrons and remind everyone that you can support our network for as little as $3 a month through Patreon. As you heard, we've grown a great deal in the last year, and we're starting to push at the edges of our current podcast hosting tier on Spreaker. We'll need to increase our storage, and that can be a bit pricey. So if you've ever thought of supporting us before, now's the time. And you can do that at patreon.com/UFPEarth.
All right. Excellent. Thanks, Chrissy. So thank you very much for tuning in to Infinite Diversity. Thank you to our executive producers, Ken Tripp, Tony Robinson, and Zach Moore. Thank you to Zach Tripp for the wonderful theme music and Tony Robinson for the awesome show art. Please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, and please subscribe. You know, we haven't gotten a review since October, so if you've listened this far and you're on Apple Podcasts, please drop us a review. We would love to hear it. All right. And we'll read it on this show if it comes, no matter what the star rating you give. And if you want to reach out, you can find the network on Twitter at UFP Earth, or our show specifically at IDIC Podcast. And you can join us for talking about any and all UFP podcasts in our Facebook group called the Federation Council Chambers, or email us at infinitediversity@ufp.earth. I think people have tended to want to contact us on social media, but if you are someone that likes to email, send us an email. It's been a while since we've gotten one. infinitediversity@ufp.earth. All right, so on the next episode, we'll be talking about our favorite characters from Season 1 of Lower Decks, which should be quite interesting because Lower Decks, as listeners might know from hearing me on this very podcast, is my least favorite Star Trek series. However, I will focus on the positive. So, until then, peace and long life.
This has been a production of MTMR Media Works.